Imagine you've been on a silent retreat for, let's say, a month and a half.
Wow, yeah. That is a long time.
Right. But you're safe. You're in your own home. It's early 2026, and you've been doing absolutely everything you can to just step away from the relentless noise of the outside world.
Completely unplugging.
Exactly. You're waking up early, you're meditating, you're journaling every day. You are actively trying to tame your thoughts and really just sit back to watch the movements of your own mind.
Which is hard enough on its own.
Oh, absolutely. But let's say it's mid-morning, the house is perfectly quiet, and you finally feel like you've reached that elusive state of peace. And then suddenly that quiet is just entirely shattered by a sharp, heavy knock at your front door.
What's fascinating here is the sheer biological reality underlying that exact moment,
Yeah.
because our nervous systems are ancient,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
and they're designed for one primary goal, which is survival. The tricky thing about the human body is that it actually doesn't know the difference between an imagined threat and a physical one. When a sudden sound breaks a long silence like that, the mind perceives potential danger, and the body reacts as if a predator has just stepped into the room.
And that biological reaction, that exact split-second shift, is really the foundation of our deep dive today. We are looking at this deeply personal, really subjective reflection piece. It's titled TwoMenInBlack.pdf.
It's a really powerful read.
It really is. And our mission today is to explore this narrative, to understand just how fast our minds can construct an absolute storm inside during uncertain times.
Yeah, total internal storm.
But more importantly, we are going to uncover the practical ground-level tools the narrator uses to find steadiness. To, as they say, learn to flute when the world feels unpredictable.
Because the author takes a very intimate experience and opens it up to reveal the hidden mechanics of human fear. It shows us how even a dedicated month-and-a-half-long mindfulness practice can be completely derailed by a single external trigger.
Exactly. Now, before we get into the vivid details of that trigger, I do need to pause and make something very clear to you, the listener.
This is important context, yeah.
It is. This source material touches on politically sensitive topics, specifically fears regarding ICE, immigration enforcement, and systemic instability. We are simply exploring the narrator's personal psychological experience and the ideas contained in this original text.
Right, we're looking at the psychology of it.
Exactly. We are not taking a political side, and we are not endorsing any viewpoints regarding immigration policies. Our goal is to impartially report the contents of the author's narrative and just understand the universal human reaction to perceived threats.
And that context is vital, because the fear in this text doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is deeply tied to the broader atmosphere of 2026.
Right. So let's look at exactly what happened. The details are so vivid. It's mid-morning. The narrator's dog, Pono, suddenly starts barking fiercely at the doorbell.
Which is usually the first alarm system, right?
Totally. So the narrator walks over, they peek through the blinds, and they see two men standing on the porch. They are wearing dark clothes. They have this very still, rigid posture.
Yeah.
And out front, parked right on the street, is a black sedan with no visible license plates.
Just those visual cues alone are enough to send the brain's threat detection system into overdrive. I mean, dark clothes, still posture, an unmarked car.
It's like a movie scene.
It is. And the brain immediately starts trying to pattern match those inputs against known dangers from the environment.
And what do we all do when we see something strange on our porch? The narrator does what any of us would do. They reach for their phone to check the Ring camera app.
Of course.
They just want a clear, objective look at who is outside. But in this twist of modern irony, the app is completely offline.
Oh, man.
Which honestly feels like a universal rule of smart home technology, doesn't it? The one time your survival feels dependent on getting a live video feed, the Wi-Fi drops.
Yeah, it really does. The timing couldn't be worse, but psychologically, it's the catalyst for the entire essay. The one piece of technology designed to provide objective reality. To give us a sense of control and visibility.
It just goes completely dark.
Exactly. And the narrator has this brilliant insight about that exact moment. Because the camera went silent, the mind was instantly free to invent the rest. They follow it up with a line that has been stuck in my head. Fear is creative like that.
Fear is creative like that. Wow. What does that actually look like in practice, though? When we lack data, why doesn't the brain just say, I don't know who that is, I'll just wait and see?
Because waiting and seeing could get you killed from an evolutionary standpoint.
Ah. Right.
When we lack objective data, our minds do not sit comfortably in the unknown. They abhor a vacuum. The brain gathers whatever fragmented details it has, the dark clothes, the unmarked car, and aggressively arranges them into a rock-solid proof of danger.
It fills in the blanks.
Exactly. Fear isn't just a passive reaction. It's a deeply creative act of storytelling designed to mobilize your body to keep you alive.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the specific story the narrator's mind begins to build is so layered, the immediate thought that flashes into their head is, what if it's ICE?
Right. Immigration and customs enforcement.
And the text dives into this very specific demographic anxiety. The narrator is Asian, but they have a Latino last name. Can you explain how the narrator connects those dots in the moment? Why does that name become the trigger for this massive panic?
The narrator explains that this name came into their family through a very unconventional history. It's a name they didn't choose, yet it carries immense societal weight.
Yeah.
In the context of 2026, the narrator has been consuming news stories about random stops, wrong identifications, and sudden deportations. Their fear is that a bureaucracy might simply look at a list, see a Latino surname, look at an Asian face that doesn't match their expectation.
And just make a catastrophic mistake.
Exactly. A huge mistake based on a mismatch of assumptions.
They say, suddenly, it wasn't the news anymore. It was my front door. Which I think perfectly captures how external events invade our private sanctuaries.
Systemic uncertainty isn't just an abstract concept we debate online or read about in newspapers.
Hmm.
It becomes a localized, physiological event.
Yes.
The news cycle had primed this person's nervous system for weeks, maybe even months. The fear traveled through the headlines, through social media, right through the walls of a silent retreat, and settled directly into their physical body.
And the body's reaction is entirely visceral. The narrator describes freezing first, but then survival mode kicks in really hard. They immediately start texting their son.
Frantically.
Yeah, they text their friends. They are frantically searching for their ID and a copy of their passport. They are locking doors, closing blinds. It's a full-blown physical mobilization. Biologically speaking, what is actually happening to them in those 3 minutes?
We often hear the term amygdala hijack, but to break that down simply, the amygdala is essentially the brain's ancient alarm bell. When it detects a threat, like an unmarked car and men in dark clothes, it completely overpowers the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the logical, problem-solving, rational part of the brain.
The part that would say, maybe it's just a delivery guy.
Right. But when the alarm bell rings, it rings so loud you literally cannot think straight. The body floods with adrenaline and cortisol, routing blood away from your digestive organs and into your muscles so you can either fight or run.
That explains the frantic searching for the passport. The logical brain just isn't driving the bus anymore.
Not at all.
But there is a fascinating paradox that happens next involving the narrator's community. They text their friends about the men at the door, and their friends text back immediately.
Yeah, they jump right in.
They do. They offer help. They send advice on what to do if immigration agents are at the door. They tell the narrator to know their rights and be ready. On the surface, that sounds like a beautiful support system, right?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can feel the warmth in that response.
Yeah.
And the narrator explicitly notes that their friends' care meant everything, but it actually acts as a double-edged sword.
How so? Reading it, my first thought was just, wow, what great friends to jump into action like that.
They are great friends, but by responding with tactical advice for a potential raid, they unwittingly provided social proof of the danger.
Oh, I see.
They effectively told the narrator's nervous system, your terrifying story is correct. The threat is real, and we are preparing for it with you.
Wow.
Once a community confirms the danger is near, the possibility solidifies into fact. It acts as an accelerant to the panic.
It creates this total echo chamber of survival mode. Everyone is just feeding off everyone else's heightened state. And the narrator draws a really brilliant contrast here between human behavior and animal behavior. Think about Pono, the dog.
Pono's a great example here.
Yeah, Pono barked fiercely at the initial doorbell. But soon after, Pono was just curled up by the couch, resting as if absolutely nothing unusual had happened.
The text makes this really humbling observation. Animals return to calm quickly. Humans take a little longer.
A little longer is an understatement.
Yeah. Animals react to the immediate physical present. When the sound stops and no one breaks through the door, the threat is gone for the dog. Humans, however, have the unique capacity to carry the threat into the future through our imagination.
We hold on to the story of the knock long after the knock is actually over. The narrator ends up staying inside all day long. Their mind is just swinging like a pendulum between rational explanations.
Like maybe it's salespeople or a neighbor looking for a package.
Exactly. Swinging between that and the absolute catastrophic version where they are taken away.
And every time that catastrophic version returned, it brought with it a very solid feeling of identity. The narrator felt a profound sense of me, a me that was threatened, a me that was targeted, a me that was fundamentally unsafe.
So the mind has built this terrifying, rock-solid reality at 10 in the morning. But the essay clearly wasn't written from a place of panic. How does the narrator go from that state of absolute terror to writing a grounded, reflective piece about it? What breaks the spell?
The turning point happens at midnight. The street is completely quiet. No one has returned. The house is still.
The tension finally drops.
Exactly. The narrator describes how something inside them finally softens. The tight fist in their chest slowly unclenches. The immediate physiological storm burns out, and because they have this background in mindfulness, they are able to sit down and actually observe what just happened.
It's like watching a detective deconstruct a crime scene, but the crime scene is their own mind. They trace the entire cascade backward perfectly.
Step by step.
They note a sound happened, a site was registered, a parked car was noticed. Then recent news stories were recalled. Old fears about identity were triggered. A body prepared for survival. And finally, a mind constructed a meaning out of all those separate pieces.
The crucial realization here is the deconstruction of that I we mentioned earlier. The narrator recognizes that within seconds of that doorbell ringing, a highly solidified sense of self had formed out of thin air. I am in danger. I am a target. I must protect myself.
But the wild part is, and they emphasize this heavily in the text, nothing had actually happened.
Right.
Outside the door, nothing occurred. The men knocked, waited, and eventually left. Yet everything had happened inside the narrator's nervous system. The men at the door were real, but the elaborate story built around them was entirely constructed by the brain.
We do this all the time in different contexts, too. Think about getting a vague email from your boss late on a Friday afternoon that just says,
"We need to talk on Monday."
yes, that exact email.
Oh, absolutely. By Friday night, you've constructed an entire reality where you are fired, you've lost your apartment, and your career is totally over. The email is real, but the catastrophe was built by the architect of your own mind.
Exactly. Now, the narrator is very careful to offer a gentle, deeply empathetic caveat here.
Yes, this is an important point.
They acknowledge that for some communities, this threat of a knock at the door isn't imagined. Some families wake up every morning facing real physical instability regarding their immigration status and really don't know what the day will bring. They state clearly that this reflection isn't meant to minimize the reality of systemic danger or suggest that all threats are just in our heads.
Right. They're specifically focusing on understanding the internal bodily reaction to uncertainty. They are highlighting how the mind tries to protect us by scanning the environment, pulling from memory, and predicting the worst possible future so we aren't caught off guard.
It's a defense mechanism.
As they say, there is nothing weak about that reaction. It's simply the nervous system doing its job to survive. But when we don't actively see that process happening, the story becomes our absolute reality.
The sense of self that formed, endangered, persecuted, helpless, it felt completely solid and undeniable at 10 in the morning. But by midnight, sitting in the quiet, it had completely dissolved. The narrator writes, "The house I built out of shadows disappeared on its own, and I was still standing."
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How did the narrator actually dissolve this internal storm before midnight? And what tools can we pull from this text to use in our own lives the next time we get that metaphorical, vague email from the boss or a terrifying news alert?
The antidote, as the narrator discovers, is awareness. It's the practice of watching the mind instead of blindly believing every story it tells you.
They shifted their internal monologue from panic to objective reality. They explicitly started separating the hard facts from their terrifying predictions.
Right.
Instead of saying, "They are here to take me," they started naming the physical reality of the moment. I hear a knock. My heart is racing. My hands are shaking.
By naming the physical sensations without attaching the catastrophic story to them, the grip of the fear began to loosen. They didn't magically make the world a safer place, but they stopped adding invisible layers of terror that weren't actually present on their porch in that exact moment.
It leads to what might be the most powerful quote in the entire text. Fear lives in imagined futures. Safety lives in the present breath.
Safety isn't always the absence of a threat outside. True safety is the anchoring of the mind to the present reality inside.
And the best part is, the narrator doesn't leave us with just abstract philosophy. You don't need to be on a silent retreat to do this. You don't need to study Buddhist texts. They lay out a 5-step toolkit for anyone to use when fear rises.
The first step the narrator suggests is just to pause. Break the momentum of the panic.
Which sounds incredibly simple, but when your heart is pounding and your amygdala is ringing that alarm bell, a pause feels almost impossible. How do they actually force that break?
That brings us to step 2, explicitly naming what is actually happening. You force the logical part of your brain back online by separating the facts of the moment from the predictions your mind is generating. You literally say to yourself, the fact is, a car is parked outside. The prediction is that I am in danger.
Just drawing that line between fact and fiction creates a little bit of breathing room. What comes next?
Step 3 involves the physical body. Place a hand firmly on your chest.
I love that they included a physical action. Why does placing a hand on the chest work biologically?
It grounds the nervous system. When you are in fight or flight, your awareness is entirely projected outward, scanning for the predator. Placing a warm, heavy hand on your chest provides a physical sensation of containment. It brings your sensory awareness back to your own body and signals to the brain that you are held, you are bounded, and you are here.
That makes so much sense. From there, step 4 is to take one slow breath. Just one. Not a 20-minute meditation, just a single intentional inhale and exhale to lower the heart rate.
And finally, step 5, say quietly to yourself, right now, in this moment, I am here.
Right now, in this moment, I am here. The narrator says that single sentence studied them. It proved that even after years of mindfulness practice, one unexpected knock can reveal how fragile our sense of control really is.
Absolutely.
But the miracle is that within the same day, they moved from absolute panic to inquiry to clarity. Not because they are superhuman, but because they paused long enough to look at the mechanics of their own mind.
The broader lesson to take away from this is immense. The world of 2026 is going to continue moving in unpredictable ways. Systems will shift. Communities will feel shaken. We cannot predict when the knock at the door will come, and we certainly cannot guarantee calm water out in the world.
Our work, according to the text, is not to try and control the world. Our work is to notice when the storm forms inside us so we don't drown in our own stories.
The awareness that notices the fear is steady. As the narrator points out, that internal steadiness cannot be misidentified by a bureaucracy, it cannot be detained, and it cannot be taken away.
I find the way they close this reflection so moving. They use this beautiful metaphor. They describe these written reflections on fear, anger, and identity as paper boats.
That's a great image.
They acknowledge that the writing is fragile, it's imperfect, but it's folded with care and released into the uncertain waters of the world, never knowing where it will land or who will read it.
It's an invitation to shared humanity. They're sending this story out to remind whoever finds it that they are not alone in the trembling, that there is something enduring inside of us that can stay present even when the river rises.
It is a deeply generous piece of writing. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. The next time you hear a metaphorical knock at your door, maybe it's that vague email from your boss, a sudden news alert flashing on your phone, or a massive, unexpected shift in your life plans, ask yourself this. How much of the danger is actually standing on your porch? And how much of it is being built by the architect of your own mind? And, more importantly, once you realize the mind is building a storm, what step will you take to anchor yourself back to the present?
It's the work of a lifetime. We keep learning how to float, one breath at a time.
We really do. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Take a moment for yourself today. Try placing a hand on your chest and finding that one steady breath. We'll catch you next time.